Prime Minister Narendra Modi participates in the India-EU leaders meeting at invitation of the President of European Council. Leaders agree to resume negotiation of trade and investment agreements. India's cumulative vaccination coverage exceeds 16 crore, 94 lakh doses. More than 20 lakh doses administered in last 24 hours. Country meanwhile records more than 4,000 COVID-related deaths for second day in a row. More than 4 lakh new cases also reported yesterday. Indian Air Force continues COVID relief efforts. 2 cryogenic containers airlifted from Jakarta to Vizag. 2 C-17 aircrafts on the way home with 2 oxygen generators from Bordeaux, France, and respiratory oxygen raw materials from Frankfurt, Germany. Global situation of COVID-19 shows a further improvement. 6 months long state of emergency lifted in most parts of Spain. Greece reopens beaches. Italy plans to lift quarantine restrictions for travelers partially from mid-May. BJP Legislative Party to meet today in Guwahati for election of leader of party in Assam. Central observers, senior leader Narendra Singh Tomar and National General Secretary Arun Singh to attend the meeting. In sports, Bayern Munich crowned Bundesliga champions for record 9th season in a row, demolishing Gladbach 6-0. Meanwhile, Manchester City to wait for the title a little longer after losing to Chelsea at home 2-1. Hello and welcome to this edition of the news. I'm Rukma in our top story. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and leaders of the European Union and its member states met in a hybrid format. Leaders of India and the EU shared views on COVID-19, trade, connectivity, technology and climate. The leaders also deeply condoled the loss of lives and expressed deeper sympathy with the families of the victims of this pandemic around the world.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the leaders of the European Union and its member states met in a hybrid format on Saturday. Prime Minister Modi participated virtually while the European members assembled in Porto in Portugal. India and EU also issued a joint statement after the virtual talk highlighting the shared interests, principles and values of democracy, freedom, rule of law and respect for human rights underpinning the India-EU strategic partnership. The main highlights of the press release established the fact that talks were on many topics and covered many international issues. All the participants noted that the meeting reflects a pivotal moment since the first India-EU summit in 2000 and further strengthens the relationship towards a better future. The leaders also deeply condoled the loss of lives and expressed the deepest sympathy with the families of the victims of this pandemic in India, Europe, and the rest of the world. The leaders supported universal, safe, equitable, and affordable access to COVID-19 vaccines, diagnostics and treatments, and the strengthening of health systems.
Prime Minister appreciated the EU's swift response for mobilizing support to India's COVID-19 response. As you would recall, India had kept its supply chains open during the first wave of COVID-19 last year and supplied essential drugs and masks to several EU countries. The EU's current assistance is an example of trusted partners supporting each other in times of need. Prime Minister also requested the EU support for our joint proposal with South Africa for a TRIPS waiver on vaccine production related patents. The EU has also supported the proposal a couple of days ago. The EU support at WTO for this waiver will ensure that we can scale up vaccine production for equitable and global access and save lives.
The leaders also highlighted commitment to the comprehensive reform of the UN Security Council to make it more effective, transparent, representative and accountable to reflect contemporary realities. More importantly, the summit emphasized commitment to a free, open, inclusive and rule-based Indo-Pacific space underpinned by the respect for territorial integrity and sovereignty, democracy and rule of law, transparency, freedom of navigation and overflight, unimpeded lawful commerce, and peaceful resolution of disputes in accordance with international law, including the United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea. Leaders at the summit reconfirmed commitment to urgently address the interdependent challenges of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. Leaders also stressed on the importance of achieving the goals of the Paris Agreement, including strengthening climate change mitigation. Leaders agreed to enhance the trade and investment relationship to realize its untapped potential.
On trade, technology and connectivity, major decisions have been taken by the leaders. India and the European Union have agreed to resume negotiations for a balanced and comprehensive free trade and investment agreements. Negotiations on both the trade and investment agreements will be pursued on parallel tracks with an intention to achieve early conclusion of both of them. As you know, the negotiations were suspended in 2013 after several rounds of talks spanning 6 years. Both sides have worked intensively over the last few months to arrive at a common understanding. The decisions are also a result of the political desire on both sides to harness the full potential of our economic engagement and work towards an early post-COVID-19 recovery.
Leaders also encouraged people-to-people exchanges in many areas including education, research, science and technology. Bureau Report, DD India.
Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal on Saturday said that India and the European Union will begin negotiations simultaneously under a comprehensive free trade agreement, as investments are an area of the EU's interest, while India is keen to get more market access for its goods and services there. The minister said trade and investment go hand in hand, and the two sides are committed to conclude the two pacts together at an early date. And India continues to bolster its COVID-19 vaccination program under liberalized and accelerated phase 3. The cumulative number of COVID-19 vaccine doses administered in the country stands at 16 crore 94 lakhs 39,663. Over 20 lakh 23,000 vaccines were administered in the last 24 hours. The vaccination exercise as a tool to protect the most vulnerable population groups in the country from COVID-19 continues to be regularly reviewed and monitored at the highest level. With the vaccination drive crossing major milestones, efforts to track COVID-19 are still going strong. With the better healthcare infrastructure facilities and test, track, treat method, a total of 30 crore 22 lakh 75,471 COVID samples have been tested for COVID-19 so far. Of these, 18 lakh 65,428 samples were tested on Saturday, that is the 8th of May yesterday. Meanwhile, India's battle against COVID-19 continues. India has registered over 4 lakh 3,000 new COVID-19 cases in the past 24 hours, while 3 lakh 86,440 people have recovered and been discharged during the same time period. With this, the total number of recoveries has crossed 1 crore 83 lakh 17,000. India's total active caseload stands at 37.36 lakhs, comprising 17.01% of total cases. The COVID-19 recovery rate in the country stands at 81.90%. Meanwhile, international COVID care aid continues to pour in, taking forward India's comprehensive strategic partnership. A consignment of 3 oxygen generators and 1,000 ventilators arrived in New Delhi from the UK. In a tweet, the MEA spokesperson deeply valued the contribution from India's close friend during this crisis. To understand the emergency, the airport authority has given custom clearance to the aircraft since within 30 minutes of its arrival. Earlier, 1900 oxygen cannules and 396 oxygen cylinders arrived from Austria, while the Czech Republic sent 500 oxygen cylinders. Amid the prevailing coronavirus crisis in the country, the Indian Air Force's IL-76 aircraft airlifted 2 cryogenic oxygen containers from Jakarta, Indonesia to Vizag, bringing much needed relief. Besides, 2 oxygen generators from Bordeaux in France were airlifted by the Indian Air Force's C-17 to the Hindon Air Base, while Zeolite, a respiratory oxygen raw material, was brought in by another C-17 aircraft from Frankfurt to Mumbai. Additionally, C-17 aircrafts airlifted 2 cryogenic oxygen containers from Hindon to Bhubaneswar and 4 from Hyderabad to Bhubaneswar. Other C-17 aircrafts are bringing 8 cryogenic oxygen containers from Nagpur and Pune to Bhubaneswar and Jamnagar, 6 from Vijayawada to Bhubaneswar, 4 from Chandigarh to Ranchi, 5 from Agra and Lucknow to Jamnagar and Ranchi, and 5 from Gwalior to Ranchi. The Oxygen Express is continuously supplying oxygen across the country with full dedication. The first Oxygen Express, carrying 4 tankers of liquid medical oxygen of 20 metric tons each, arrived at Kanpur before schedule today. Another Oxygen Express arrived in Varanasi this morning. The 6th express sent for the holy city from Durgapur. The oxygen will be sent to various hospitals to fulfill the need of COVID-19 patients across the city and nearby areas. The Oxygen Express from Angul in Odisha reached Nagpur this morning as well. This oxygen will provide great relief for COVID-19 patients in Maharashtra. Meanwhile, the Defence Research Development Organization is building 2 COVID care hospitals in Haldwani and Rishikesh in Uttarakhand. The hospital in Haldwani will have 500 beds, including 375 oxygen beds and 125 ventilator beds. The hospital in Rishikesh will have 400 oxygen beds and 100 ventilator beds. Meanwhile, in Noida in Uttar Pradesh, 7 people were arrested for selling counterfeit remdesivir injections. According to Noida police, the accused, associated with the medical profession, were selling vials of injections used in pneumonia treatment packaged as remdesivir. They were selling them at 12,000 to 40,000 rupees per vial. Remdesivir is an antiviral drug that is being used for the treatment of COVID-19 patients. The Ayush Ministry has launched a massive nationwide campaign to distribute its polyherbal Ayurvedic drugs Ayush 64 and Kabasura Kudinir to the majority of out-of-hospital COVID-19 patients. In a statement, the ministry said that the efficacy of these drugs has been proved through robust multi-center clinical trials. A multi-stakeholder campaign has been launched by Union Minister Kiran Rijiju to ensure that these medicines reach the needy in a transparent and efficient manner. Chairperson, Interdisciplinary Ayush R&D Task Force, Professor Bhushan Patwardhan said that Ayush 64 has effectively shown to reduce the duration of hospitalization in COVID patients. In Bihar, the vaccination process for those between 18 and 44 years began this morning. Vaccines will be available at the nearest health center. Prior registration and slot booking is a must for vaccination. Bihar has received 3,50,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccines for those in the age group of 18 to 44 years. The 15-day statewide curfew imposed by the Goa government to curb the spread of COVID began at 7 a.m. today. In capital Panaji, milk, vegetables, newspaper vendors, medical stores, grocery shops were open in the morning. People were seen in the morning buying milk and vegetables. The market complex of Panaji Corporation is closed and police security has been maintained. In a curfew order issued by collectors, shops selling essential commodities are allowed to operate between 7 a.m. and 1 p.m. However, there is no timing restriction for home delivery. Restaurants are allowed to provide home delivery or takeaway services. Only those who have valid reason to travel, like joining duties in offices or industries, or for medical reasons, will be allowed on the road during the day. People entering Goa will have to provide COVID negative certificates for a test done in a maximum of 72 hours prior to entering the Goa, or a full vaccination certificate. In the wake of rising cases of COVID-19, Puducherry on Saturday announced a complete lockdown to contain the spread of the disease in the Union Territory. The restriction will come into effect from the 10th of May midnight and will remain in force till 24th May midnight. The last such lockdown order, dated April 27th, was effective up to the 3rd of May. The Union Territory's administration notice said that the curve is still not flat and it is necessary to continue restrictions beyond the 10th of May midnight to break the chain of COVID transmission. All beaches, parks, gardens are to be closed for the public on all days. Gatherings and congregations in any form are strictly prohibited. In other news, in Assam, the BJP legislature party is meeting today in Dispur to elect the next chief minister of the state, a week after the ruling alliance won the assembly elections with a clear majority. The meeting is scheduled to begin at 12 and Union Minister Narendra Singh Tomar and Party General Secretary Arun Singh will be present as central observers. Bejayant Panda, BJP's Assam in charge, will also be present on the occasion. No details of the scheduled meeting have been divulged, even as Chief Minister Sarbananda Sonowal and Health Minister Himanta Biswa Sharma, both contenders for the top post, were summoned to New Delhi yesterday for discussions on the formation of the next government in the state. The Indian and Indonesian navies conducted passage exercise PASEX in the southern Arabian Sea yesterday. The Indian Navy was represented by INS Sharda, an offshore patrol vessel, with a Chetak helicopter embarked on board, and the Indonesian Navy was represented by KRI Sultan Hasanuddin, a 90-meter corvette. The last PASEX between Indian Navy and Indonesian Navy was conducted on the 13th of March between INS Kalpini, IN Donia and KRI Sultan Iskandar Muda. The exercise aimed at improving interoperability and understanding between the friendly navies are regularly conducted by the Indian Navy with units of friendly foreign countries. And time now to take a look at the updates on COVID-19 from across the world. The virus has so far infected more than 15 crore 83 lakh people globally, while the number of recoveries stand at above 13 crores 57 lakhs. COVID-19 has claimed over 32 lakh 96,000 lives worldwide. The United States continues to be the worst affected country, with the disease infecting above 3 crore 34 lakh. The country has lost over 5 lakh 95,000 lives due to COVID so far. With widely spaced sun lounges and regular disinfections, Greece reopened its organized beaches on Saturday as the popular Mediterranean holiday destination eased COVID-19 curbs in preparation for the return of foreign visitors next week. Tourism accounts for about a fifth of Greece's economy and jobs, and after the worst year on record for the industry last year, the country can ill afford another lost summer. "We are pinning our hopes on tourism," said Nikos Veneris, who manages a sandy beach on the seafront suburb of Alimos, just outside the capital, Athens, where social distancing measures will remain in place. For Greek beach lovers, Saturday's reopening of the country's organized beaches was a chance to let off steam after months of lockdown. Meanwhile, Spain has lifted the state of emergency imposed last October in all but 4 of the country's 17 regions. The state of emergency allowed the central government to enforce a nationwide curfew and local travel bans to contain rampant COVID-19 contagion. The decision to impose curfew was taken in view of the sudden surge in COVID-19 cases across Spain. Hundreds of people were seen partying in Madrid, welcoming the end of the curfew. People took to Sol Square, traditionally used to celebrate New Year's Eve, to cheer freedom, dance, play the drums and drink with their friends. Italian Foreign Minister Luigi Di Maio said on Saturday that the country is planning to lift quarantine restrictions for travelers arriving from European countries, Britain and Israel as early as mid-May, in a bid to revive the tourism industry. Quarantine requirement may be scrapped for those arriving from the United States from June, Di Maio said, after meeting Health Minister Roberto Speranza to discuss the easing of restrictions for countries where vaccination levels are high. People entering Italy from other European countries and Israel currently face 5 days of quarantine and mandatory testing both before arrival and at the end of their isolation period. For travelers arriving from the United States, the required quarantine period is 10 days. Meanwhile, Bangladesh has decided to further extend the closure of the land border with India for 14 more days in view of the COVID situation in India. The decision was taken in a meeting chaired by Foreign Secretary Masood bin Momen in Dhaka. Earlier, the government had announced a closure of borders with India for 14 days on April 26th. However, movement of cargo will continue through the land border. The sample positivity rate in the country was reported at 8.74%. Bangladesh is currently under lockdown, which has been slowly relaxed since it was first imposed on the 5th of April. Bangladesh reported 45 deaths and 1,285 fresh infections on Saturday. With this, the total number of infections has gone up to 7,72,000 and the death toll has touched 11,878. French President Emmanuel Macron on Saturday urged the US government to drop restrictions on exports of COVID-19 vaccines and components for the vaccines. Speaking at a European Union summit in Portugal, Macron said that rich nations had to open up their vaccine capacity to help less developed states. In other international news, Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon vowed on Saturday to press ahead with plans for a new referendum on leaving the United Kingdom after saying there was no doubt elections to the Scottish Parliament would return a pro-independence majority. In a rebuke to British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who has said he would block a secession vote, Sturgeon said it would be absurd for any politician in London to try to block a vote. Results on Saturday showed Sturgeon's Scottish National Party, the SNP, well on course for a 4th consecutive term in office, having triumphed in 62 of the 86 seats so far declared for the 129-seat Parliament. However, the electoral system, which allocates 56 seats on a proportional representation basis that helps smaller parties, means it was highly unlikely to obtain an overall majority, falling 1 or 2 seats short. The Scottish Greens, who also support independence, were expected to win more than half a dozen seats. Johnson, who the British government say must approve a referendum for it to be legal, has repeatedly indicated he will not allow one, pointing out the Scots backed staying in the United Kingdom in a once-in-a-generation poll in 2014. 14. 3 people, including a toddler, were shot in New York City's Times Square as gunfire broke out in what is being termed a dispute. Police Commissioner Dermot Shear said that a family from Brooklyn had brought the child to Times Square to buy toys. Shear said that she and the other 2 victims, a 23-year-old female tourist from Rhode Island and a 43-year-old woman from New Jersey, did not appear related to one another or to the shooting itself, and clears that all the 3 are innocent bystanders. The victims were shot in their leg. And some sports news now. Bayern Munich won the German domestic football league Bundesliga title for the 9th consecutive season yesterday. The Bavarians destroyed Borussia Gladbach 6-0 in the decisive game. Earlier, RB Leipzig, who are second on the table, lost to Borussia Dortmund for 3-2, leaving Bayern a chance to clinch the title with 2 games remaining. This is their 31st German league title and 30th Bundesliga crown since the introduction of the top division in 1963. The victory lifted Dortmund into the Champions League places, but Eintracht Frankfurt can knock them out of 4th place if they beat Mainz on Sunday. In the English Premier League, Manchester City will have to wait for the crown at least till their next game as they suffer defeat from Chelsea in their home ground. Chelsea, who are also their UCL final opponents, bagged the 3 points with a last-minute winner from Marcos Alonso yesterday. Raheem Sterling scored the first goal of the match for City at the 44th minute. 2 minutes later, Argentine striker Sergio Aguero missed a penalty for the Sky Blues. Hakim Ziyech scored the leveller for Chelsea at the 63rd minute, while Alonso closed the score sheet in injury time. With the defeat of Leicester City, Chelsea is now 3rd on the Premier League table. And in tennis, Alexander Zverev produced an impressive display to beat Dominic Thiem in straight sets on Saturday and book his spot in the Madrid Open final, where he will face either Casper Ruud or Matteo Berrettini. 5th seed Zverev, who stunned 5-time champion Rafael Nadal in the quarterfinals on Friday, saw off Thiem 6-3, 6-4 in a repeat of the 2018 final, which was also won by the German. Thiem threatened a late fight back after trailing 4-1 in the second set, but had too much to do to reach a 3rd Madrid final. The birth anniversary of Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore is being observed today. Paying tributes to Gurudev, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said, "On Tagore Jayanti, I bow to the great Gurudev Tagore. May his exemplary ideals keep giving us strength and inspiration to build the India he dreamt of." And that's all we have for you in this edition of the news. News and updates continue on DD News and DD India. Meanwhile, here's a quick reminder. The fight against COVID-19 is at a peak. So don't forget, the best protection is your mask. Moreover, maintain social distancing and hand hygiene. Meanwhile, stay home, stay safe. That's all from me for now. Namaskar.